Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this first grammar clinic session. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be having more sessions like this, and we're going to be having a look at different parts of grammar that will be useful for you on your course here at Elizabeth School of London. So my name is Kieran. I will be leading you through this workshop today. So I am one of your English support tutors here. So hopefully over the next few weeks, we'll get to know each other and we'll learn a few things and we'll have some fun as well. Okay. So today we're going to be having a look at present tenses. So this is something that may seem quite easy and quite simple at the start, but is something that we really need to make sure that we've got correct. Okay, so it is one of those foundations of our language here. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have on the agenda for today, and then we'll get on to the learning itself. So for each of the present tenses, we're going to be having a look at its form, so how we make them, how we create them, kind of the formula for it. We're going to have a look at their functions, so what kind of function they have or when we use them. Then we'll have a look at the context in which we use them. Okay, what kind of situations? And then lastly, we will be doing some little activities where we will practice using them. Okay, so if you have no questions, then we are going to move on to the first one, which is present simple. So present simple, how do we make it? Okay, hopefully you're all screaming at your monitors telling me, Kieran, it's easy to do this. It is. Well, hopefully it is. So let's have a look at how we make it then. So for the present simple, we have our subject, I, we, they, you, he, she, it, etc. And then we have the verb in its most basic form, which means it is the infinitive without to. So like you can see here on the screen, it's quite easy. So if we take, for example, the verb work, it would be I work, he, she, it works, and we, they, you work. So you see that for most of our pronouns like I, we, they, or you, nothing changes. It just stays as work. But when we have he, she, it, we need to add on the S there. Okay. So every single verb will follow this pattern. Okay, so I and we, they, you will follow the pattern, and he, she, it will have its own separate one. Okay. All right, but you do need to be careful because it is not always S that we add on the end. It could be ES or it could be IES as well. So let's have a look at the situations where we would use it. Okay, so like we mentioned, this is only for he, she, it. The other ones just have the basic form. Okay, so normally it would be S, let's say maybe 90% of the time. But if the verb ends in CH, for example, teaches, teach, or if it ends in SH or double S or O or double Z or X, then what you need to do is add ES on the end. So like we see here, if it's CH, it will be watches with ES. If it is SH, for example, we got washes, ES, and you can see the other examples there. Okay, so if your verb has those, you add ES. On some occasions, you may need to use IES. And that is when the verb ends in a consonant, so B, C, D, F, G, and those letters. And then if the verb ends in a consonant and a Y, you remove the Y and then add IES on the end. So in the example here, we have cry, so that is C-R-Y. R is a consonant, then we have Y, so we remove the Y and add IES onto the end of it. Okay. All right. So that is what we do in the positive. Then if we're having a look at the negative, we use the subject again. I, he, she, it, we, they, you. Then we use either don't or doesn't. And then we use the verb again in the infinitive, but it doesn't change. Okay. So if we're again talking about work, it would be I don't work or he, she, it doesn't work. Okay. So For this, it follows the same pattern as the positive one. So it would be I don't work, we, they, you don't work, but he, she, it doesn't work here. Okay. And then for the question form, we use do or does, plus the subject again, I, he, she, it, we, they, you, and then the verb, again with no changes, and then a question mark at the end. Okay, so it would be do I work, do we, they, you work, but for he, she, it, we use does. Does he, does she, does it work? Okay. Okay, so that is how we make it. Now let's think about how we actually use it. Okay, so we can use present simple for permanent states or situations. So these are things that exist now, existed in the past, exist in the future, and they are always correct. So he is he is 185 centimeters tall. Okay. She has blue eyes and blonde hair. I am Romanian. I work at Amazon. So any kind of permanent situation is when we would use present simple. Okay. And in a similar idea to this, for things that are generally true, for things that are facts, we would use present simple as well. Okay, so water boils at 100 degrees, the earth revolves around the sun. These are generally true things. We would use present simple for these. Okay, and another situation where we would use it is for any type of habit or routine. Okay, so if you are using the word like always, sometimes, often, never, if you've noticed that you're using that word, then you should probably use present simple with it. Okay, so you can see the examples here on the screen. He always does his homework. I usually go shopping on Friday. We sometimes have dinner in a restaurant. Okay, so those are pretty much the only situations where we use present simple. If you're using it in a different way, then you're probably using it incorrectly. Okay, so something permanent, something generally true, or a habit or a routine, that is present simple. Okay, so we know how to make it. We know the situations in which we make it. Now let's have a look at some practice exercises. Okay, all right. So let me just close this for a second. Okay. So we are going to do the practice exercise together here. Okay. So what you might want to do is you might want to pause the video and have a look at the questions and complete them for yourself. Okay. And then we will come back and we will see what the answers are together. Okay. So here they are on the screen. Okay. So you can see them now. So pause your video, write down your answers, and then we will check them afterwards. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you've come back now. So let's have a look at our answers. So it should be the Earth revolves around the sun. Water boils at 100 degrees. Dr. Smith teaches chemistry. Researchers often conduct experiments. The library opens at 9 o'clock. Students don't have access to the lab. The course syllabus includes several assignments. He studies and plans to major in genetics. Peer-reviewed journals provide reliable sources of information. And lastly, it is a question. Hopefully you noticed that. And it should be, do you understand the concept of quantum dynamics? Okay, so if you don't have any questions there, everyone, let's move on to our next section. So our next section here is present continuous. So present continuous, let's think about how we make it then. Okay, so have a little think. Have a think back to your school days. Do you remember hearing about how to make present continuous? Okay, so let's have a look. So in present continuous, this is basically the ing form. Okay, so we take our subject, I, he, she, it, we, they, you. We use the verb to be. So am or is or are, and then we use the verb in the ing form. Okay. All right. So it is I am working, he, she, it is working, and we, they, you are working. Okay. So for each group of subjects, it actually changes here, and you will need to remember all three of those. Okay. All right. So let's be careful with the spelling again here. Okay. So normally we just add ing on, but there are some situations where we need to be a little bit different about how we make the continuous form. So if your verb ends with e, for example, in the word make, then what we should do is drop the e and then add ing onto the end of it. Okay, so make, lose the e, and then add ing, so it is making. Okay, now this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, okay, because we are going to be doubling some letters in the next part. Okay, so let's take this one a little bit slowly. For verbs that end with a consonant preceded by a vowel. Okay, so hopefully we know the difference here between a consonant and a vowel. Consonant is those letters with B, C, D, F, G, H, etc. Vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So if the verb ends in a vowel and then a consonant, like the word swim, I is a consonant, sorry, I is a vowel, M is a consonant. So if you have that kind of situation, what you do is you double the consonant. So you have two M's and then you add ing onto the end of it. Okay. Now for the next one, it talks about two-syllable words. Okay, so those are verbs that have the two syllables in them, so two separate sounds. Here, like forget. If you have that kind of verb, then what you do is you double the last consonant. Okay. All right, so here we have T at the end, so you double it. So you have forget to forgetting with two T's. Okay. All right, and then again, if your verb ends in IE, you change the IE to Y, and then you add ing onto the end of it. So here we have lie, we change the IE to Y, and then we add ing onto the end of it. Okay, so that's what we do with the positive form. Let's have a look at the negative form. Okay, so we take our subjects, we use the verb to be, am, is, are. Then we use the verb, then we use the words not, and then we use the verb in the ing form. Okay, so I am working, okay, would become I am not working. He, she, it is working would then change to he, she, it is not working. And then we, they, you are working changes to we, they, you are not working. Okay, so quite simple to make that one. And let's have a look at the question form. Okay, so in the question form, what we do is we take our normal order and change it the other way around. Okay, so in the positive sentence, it is I am working. But if we make it into a question, it would be am I working? If it was she is working, we change it around to is she working? And then if we have, for example, you are working, we would turn it the other way and it becomes are you working? All right, so that's a nice simple way for you to remember that one. Just turn it around. Okay, so let's think about the circumstances in which we use the present continuous. So the nice, easy way to remember it is for things that are happening at this moment. So you see on the screen, we've got now. So if you find yourself using the word now, then you're probably going to be using present continuous. So like we see on the screen, I am writing an email now. Okay. So think about what you are doing at this moment. So for me, I am presenting a workshop. I am breathing. I am talking. You are listening and watching, hopefully. So in a similar circumstance here, but not exactly the same, for things that are generally happening around this time, but not necessarily at this exact moment. Okay. So, like you can see on here, he is studying hard for his exams these days. Okay, so these days, kind of around this period of time, but not necessarily at this moment. Okay. Okay, so the next one for actions or situations that are developing over time. So the climate is getting warmer. Okay, so I think that is quite clear, that one. Okay. Now, this is a good one. This one is a good one. Okay. So to express frustration that an action happens too often. So it could be those nice little annoying things that get on your nerves. You could use this in present continuous to describe that behavior. Okay. So here it says she is always complaining about the weather. Okay. So you're frustrated. It happens too often. That's where you use present continuous. But something we need to remember, okay? You need to be careful because there are some verbs that we just never use in the continuous. And these are called state verbs or stative verbs, things like this. So these verbs we only ever use in the simple form. We never use in the continuous form. Okay. So they are usually connected to things like senses, feelings, things where there isn't an obvious action that we can see. Okay. So if you have a look here on the right, to see, to hear, to smell, to like, dislike, hate, prefer, to know, to think, to understand. Okay. There is no kind of obvious visual evidence that the action is taking place. So in that situation, it is a state. If it is a state, we usually use it in the simple form and we cannot use it in the continuous form. Okay. All right, so you can see more on here: love, hate, like, prefer, have, own, belong, to know, believe, understand, and to seem, appear, and sound. Okay, so like we've said, these are almost always used in the simple and almost never used in the continuous. So we've got an example here on the screen. Can we say, I am knowing the answer? Does that sound right? Hopefully you're all saying that. No, it isn't right. And because it isn't right, that's why. So no is a state verb, can't be used in the continuous. So the correct answer should be I know the answer. Okay. So let's have a look at this next activity here. We've got 7 sentences. And in some of these sentences, there are some mistakes. You need to find them and correct them. And if there is a mistake, it is about the use of the present continuous. Okay. So have a look at them. And you can see here it says that some of the sentences may actually be correct. Okay, so pause the video at this point, find your pen and paper, write down what the answers should be, and then we will check the answers. Okay, so thank you for joining me again here. So let's have a look at the answer. So the first one, I understand. That doesn't seem right, does it? So it should be I understand. Okay, because remember, understand is a state verb, so it can only be in the simple. Right, number 2, the researchers are not conducting experiments. What do you think, everyone? This one is correct. Okay. Right, number 3, what do you think, everyone? Are you working on your thesis or you are still gathering data? A little bit of a hint there from me nearly telling you. Yeah, it should be, are you still gathering, not you are still. Okay, number 4, they is discussing. Does that feel correct? No, it doesn't. It should be they are discussing. Okay, number 5, the university planning. Does that feel right? No, it doesn't. It should be the university is planning. Okay, number 6, I am work on a new methodology. Correct or not? Not correct. It should be I am working. Okay, and number 7, she isn't believing. What do we think, everyone? It is wrong. It should be she doesn't believe, because believe is a state verb. Okay, so we're doing quite well here. We're making very good progress. Okay, so we shall move on if we have no further questions. On to present perfect simple. Okay, so this is where it starts to get more difficult. This is where we often get problems here with the use of present perfect simple. So hopefully, after we've looked at this, we will have a better understanding of how we use present perfect simple. So let's start with maybe the easiest part of how we actually make it. Okay, so as you can see here on the screen, what we do is we take the subject, okay, then we use have or has, and then we use the past participle of the verb, which is also known as the third form. Okay, so the examples on the screen tell us here, I have worked, he, she, it has worked, and we, they, you have worked. Okay, if you use another verb, it doesn't matter, it still follows the same form. So I have played, he, she, it has played, we, they, you have played. Okay, so that is how we make it in the positive, but if we want to make it into the negative, it is also quite easy to do as well. So if we imagine you have I have worked, to make it into negative, you just add in not. So it would be I have not worked or I haven't worked. And it follows for the other ones as well. He, she, it hasn't worked, and we, they, you haven't worked as well. And then in the question form, quite similar to the other ones we've looked at, you simply change the word order. Okay, so if we have I have worked, it becomes have I worked, question mark. Okay, if we have you have worked, we change the position again and it becomes have you worked. Okay, so that's the easy part. That's how we make it. Now let's think about in which situations we use it. Okay, so one of our first uses is for actions that occurred in the past, but the time is not specific. Okay, so it says here, I have read that book. Now, we don't know when the person read it. All we know is that it was in the past, but it's not important about when you read it. The more important thing here is that the action occurred. Okay, so all we know is that it is sometime before now. Okay, so another situation could be when something has recently finished. So this is normally where you're using the word just. Okay, so as you can see here on the screen, they have just finished a meeting. So that could be, it was a couple of seconds ago, a couple of minutes ago, something like that. So if you're explaining that, you should use present perfect simple. Okay, so another situation is when you're talking about your life experiences. Okay, so it's maybe something interesting in your life, in your whole life, you would use present perfect simple. So it says here, I have swum with dolphins. Okay, so it's quite similar to the first one. Something happened at some point in the past, but is not specific. All we know that it was during your lifetime. Okay, so all of those kind of fun occasions, maybe you have fired a gun, you have jumped out of an aeroplane, you have, you know, met a famous person, something like that, you would use present perfect simple. Okay. Another situation could be when you're trying to describe how many times you have done something. Okay, so if you look at the example sentence, we have visited that museum several times. Okay, because again, you're talking about your past, but not at any specific moment. Okay, and then this one we've got here to show how something has changed or evolved over a period of time. Okay, so it tells us here the company has grown significantly in the last 5 years. That means that it started in the past and it is continuing now. Okay, And that connects with the last one here. I have lived here for 10 years. This means that you moved here 10 years ago. You lived for all of that period and you are still living here now. That would be in present perfect. Okay. So that can sometimes be quite difficult to understand. So it is sometimes quite useful to think about the words that we use with it. So we've seen that we've used the word just here. Okay, so if you're using just, you're probably going to be using present perfect simple too. So just is when you have described something that happened a short time ago. Okay, so we've already discussed that. So I have just eaten. Okay, so if you see someone who looks full, then you could say that they have just eaten. Okay, if you're using the word already, you're probably going to be using present perfect simple as well. Okay, so for already, this is something that has happened sooner than you expected, or sooner than some person expected. Okay, so they have already left. So maybe this is something that is a little bit surprising or ahead of schedule. Okay. We can also use the word yet. Okay, so yet is normally used in negative sentences or in question to indicate something that is expected to happen. Okay, so the question, have you finished the report yet? And then the negative form, I haven't finished the report yet. All right, so there is an expectation that you will do it. Okay, but if you're using it in the negative, it means you haven't done it at this moment. Okay, so we know how to make it. We know when to make it. Now let's try practicing it as well. So another activity here for you to do where you should pause the video and practice it. So they give you the verb. You just very simply need to change it into present perfect simple. So make sure that you're looking at the subject and choosing the correct form. Okay, so take a couple of minutes to complete the answers and then we will come back and check. Okay, so hopefully you've completed your answers there. So now is a good time to check what you've got. So for the first one, we should have the research team has completed their study. Okay, she has written 3 research papers. We haven't read the latest findings. All right, in number 4, we've got the professor has taught at this university for over 20 years. In number 5, they have published their results. Okay. For number 6, I have never seen such detailed data analysis. Number 7 is a question, so hopefully you remember to change the order here. So it would be, have you submitted your application? In number 8, we have the department has already organized the seminar. In number 9, many students have taken part. And in number 10, he has not attended or he hasn't attended any of the recent lectures. Okay, so if you had any problem with that, pause the video, maybe go back and have a look at the explanations from before and maybe try the activity again. But if you have no problems, we're going to move on to the final part, which is present perfect continuous. Okay. So it is perfect, like the one we've looked at before, and it is continuous, like present continuous, which we looked at before. So if we combine them together, we get present perfect continuous. So let's think about how we make it then. So a bit more difficult now. We have our subject, then we have to use have or has. We need to use been, and then we need to use the verb in its ing form. So if you take the verb work, for example, it would be I have been working, he, she, it has been working, and we, they, you have been working. That's in the positive form. In the negative form, you just use not to change it. So I haven't been working, it hasn't been working, you haven't been working. And then in the question form, again, we change the word order. Okay, you flip it, reverse it. Okay, so you see here it is you have been working. You change those words around and it becomes have you been working. Okay, so quite logical, the formula in how we make it, but let's think about how we should use it. Okay, so like we mentioned a little bit earlier, it can be for actions that started in the past and continue into the present. So I have been studying for 3 years. Okay, you started 3 years ago and have continued up to now. Okay, it can be for actions that recently finished, but there is a result or a consequence that you can see now. There is some kind of evidence that proves that that thing happened. So let's slow down a bit. Let's have a look at the example. She has been working hard and now she needs a break. So if she has been working hard, so she recently finished working hard, what could be the result or the consequence? Maybe she's kind of sweating or tired or something like that. So if you see that she is sweating or tired, you would say that she needs a break. Yeah. Okay. So this is how we would use present perfect continuous here. Okay. So the next one, for an action that is happening now, but it is only temporary and it will not last forever. Okay. So it says here, we have been living in London for the last few months. So maybe that's what you're doing now, but you plan to change it in the future. Okay. All right. Now, also, for actions that have been repeated over a period of time leading up to the present. So it's similar to this one at the top about something that started in the past and continued now, but this is something that is happening again and again and again and again up to the present. So it says here, he has been calling the office every day this week. So, imagine this is a Friday. He called on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now he is calling again on the Friday. This is where you would use present perfect continuous. Okay. And in opposition to present perfect simple, which was telling you how many times you did something or have done something more specifically, present perfect continuous talks about how long something has been continuing. So it is more about the duration. Okay. So they have been working on this project since March. Okay, that tells us how long. And I have been waiting for you for an hour. Okay, this tells us how long as well. So linking with that final part there are some time expressions which will help us to use present perfect continuous. Okay, so we have the word for. So for tells us the duration, how long something has happened. So I have been studying for 2 hours. And then the other one we can use is since, and since tells us when something started. Okay, so if they have been working here since 2010, we know that they have been working here for 14 years, but since tells us that starting point. Okay, and you can also use these more general phrases here, like lately and recently. They tell us about something that has happened in the past, but recently in the past. So she has been feeling unwell lately. Okay, and other similar phrases here we can use like all day, all week, all year, for example. Okay, and they tell us that the action that we're talking about has lasted all of that day or all of that week or all of that year. So we have been cleaning the house all day. There has been no rest. All of the day has been spent on cleaning. Okay, so sometimes it can be difficult to tell then the difference between present perfect simple and continuous. Okay, because I think both of them said about something that started in the past and continues now, but there are some clear differences between them. So present perfect simple, sorry, focuses on the completion of the action that it is done, or more specifically, the result of the action. Okay. So when you say, I have read this book, you're focusing on the fact that you have completed it. You are done with it. Present perfect continuous focuses on the duration, how long, or the ongoing nature of it. So maybe it is still in progress. Okay. So if you would say, I have been reading this book for 2 hours, you started in the past and you are still continuing now, and you're focusing on the 2 hours part. It's been a long activity. Okay. So those are the clearest differences between the two. Okay. So in the next activity, you're only using present perfect continuous. They give you the verb. You need to fill in the space with the correct form of the verb. Okay, so as usual, as we've done all the way through, pause the video, write down your answers, and then we will check to see what you have. Okay, everyone, so let's quickly have a look at the answers then. So for the first one, it would be has been collecting. Number 2, she has been working. Number 3, I have been reading. The next one is they have been preparing. Number 5, the professor has been teaching. Number 6, we have been analyzing. The next one, you needed to have been discussing. Now, this one was negative. So I haven't been sleeping. He has been studying. And the last one, the department has been considering. Okay. All right. So they all follow the same pattern. Been, been, ink, 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 ink. You just need to decide have or has. Okay. So we have looked at all 4 of them. Now let's put them all together and let's test if you can differentiate between them and still get the right answers. So in this activity here, you will need to choose the correct tense for yourself. So have a look to see if there are any little hints or clues in the sentences that can help you. So remember those time phrases, or have a look if there is a state verb there that would tell you it needs to be in the simple or not. Okay, so yeah, pause the video, write your answers, and then come back. Alrighty, so let's see what you should have, which tense, and then also what the answer would actually be. So for number 1, you should have our professor gives us lectures every Monday. So because we have every Monday, we know this is a repeated action, so it needs to be present simple. Number 2, it should be the students are working on the group project. So because it tells us right now, we know something is happening at this moment, so it should be present continuous. Okay, so for number 3, it should be I have been studying for the past 3 years. So the phrase there for the past 3 years tells us about duration, how long. So we need to use PPC, present perfect continuous. Number 4, she has not finished her assignment yet. Remember before when we talked about yet? So that tells us it needs to be PPS, which means present perfect simple. It is not completed, but we are focusing on the result. Number 5, you needed has, which is present simple. This is something that is a fact or something that is generally true. Okay, number 6, it tells us since the beginning. So we should be using have been discussing, which is present perfect continuous, something that is continuing now. Number 7, it should be is reviewing, present continuous, again, because it tells us at the moment something happening now. Number 8, has been collecting, again, because we have for 6 months, this should be present perfect continuous, something that started in the past and continues. Now, number 9, you needed 2 answers here. He usually submits his work on time. We have the word usually, so that tells us that something is a habit. It should be present simple. Okay, in the next box, we should have had is struggling, because it tells us this week, this is something that is a temporary situation that is happening around now. So you need present continuous. And number 10, the professor has already read it, because we've got the word already. That tells us it should be present perfect simple, something that is completed, but it has some relevance or some evidence in the present. Okay. So that brings us to the end of our workshop. I hope that was useful for everybody there. So if you do need any other help with anything English related, then please do get in touch with us by the email that we got on the screen. So English support _Manchester wh@esl.ac.uk. Either myself or my colleague Christine will be able to help you out with any of the problems that you may have. Okay, so we are able to do stuff on campus, but also we can organize something through Teams online. Okay, so any problem, big or small, please do get in touch with us. Okay, if you have any feedback on the workshop today, please do scan the QR code and it will take you to a form where you can fill in your views and your opinions. And lastly, if you would like any more practice with the tenses that we've had a look at today, scan this new QR code on the screen, and that will take you to a form where you can practice those skills. All right, so thank you very much, everybody, for that today, and I hope it was useful, and I will see you again in future.